The penthouse apartment divided itself into territories as clearly as any treaty could have drawn borders. Marcus Sterling occupied the east wing, master suite, home office, sleek lines of chrome and glass that reflected the Chicago skyline like a second city suspended in mirrors. Rebecca Morrison claimed the west, guest bedroom converted to living quarters, small alcove transformed into an art studio where watercolors dried on makeshift racks, where the smell of turpentine and linseed oil marked her domain. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 3 months into their arrangement, they had perfected the art of coexistence without collision. Marcus woke at 5, as he always did, pulled on running gear, and worked through a punishing routine on the treadmill while CNBC played on mute. The stock markets opened. Numbers shifted. His encryption software sat in final testing phases, a breakthrough in quantum-resistant security that would either revolutionize data protection or become the most expensive failure of his career. The Thomas Whitfield deal hung over everything like weather about to break. $200 million. Legitimacy. Proof that Sterling Tech wasn't just another startup burning through venture capital. All he'd needed was a wife. Becca rose before dawn, not from habit, but from necessity. Sleep came in fragments since leaving the Marines. Interrupted by dreams she couldn't quite remember but felt in her chest for hours afterward. She painted in those stolen hours before sunrise, broad washes of color that had nothing to do with the children's book illustrations she sold for rent money. These paintings were hers alone. Turbulent skies, figures half-formed in shadow, the kind of emotional honesty she couldn't afford to show anyone, least of all her temporary husband. They met for dinner twice a week, scheduled like board meetings. Tuesday and Friday evenings at 7. Dining room table set with careful precision, conversations that covered weather and work and the surface of things. They practiced their story, met at a charity fundraiser, bonded over mutual friends, quiet courtship that blossomed into sudden certainty. Marcus had written it like a press release. Becca had memorized it like a script. Tyler's therapist thinks he might walk with braces by spring, Becca said on a Tuesday, moving pasta around her plate without eating much. The new physical therapy protocol is showing progress. Marcus looked up from his phone, something flickering across his expression too quickly to identify. That's good. The medical bills are covered, she finished. Thanks to our arrangement. The words sat between them, a reminder of the transaction that bound them. $50,000 paid directly to the rehabilitation center. Tyler's care guaranteed for a year. All Becca had to do was wear a ring, attend social functions, and maintain the illusion that Chicago's most eligible tech CEO had finally settled down. It should have felt simple. It didn't. There's an event tomorrow night, Marcus said, setting his phone aside. Industry reception. Nothing formal, but Whitfield will be there. We should attend. Becca nodded. She'd become good at these performances. The supportive wife, elegant in borrowed dresses, smiling at the right moments, laughing at jokes she didn't find funny. The tech world fascinated her in ways she couldn't articulate. All these brilliant minds building digital fortresses while she'd spent 8 years learning how to breach physical ones. She wondered sometimes what Marcus would think if he knew. If he'd seen her before, the version of her that had existed in combat zones, that had made decisions with seconds to spare, that had held her best friend while she bled out in the sand. He wouldn't have married that woman, even temporarily. The next morning, Sarah Chun appeared at the penthouse door with files Marcus had forgotten, her expression carefully neutral as Becca answered in paint-splattered sweats and a Marine Corps t-shirt she should have thrown away years ago. Mrs. Sterling, Sarah said, the title still sounding foreign. Just Becca, she replied, as she always did. Marcus is in his office. Sarah nodded, but paused. The shirt. My brother served. Army, 2 tours. Past tense. Becca heard it in the weight of the word. I'm sorry. Me too. Sarah's expression softened briefly before professional distance reasserted itself. He would have liked you, I think. After Sarah left, Becca stood in the hallway, staring at her reflection in the ornamental mirror. The woman looking back seemed like a stranger, softer, quieter, diminished somehow. She'd spent 2 years constructing this version of herself, this civilian disguise that let her move through the world without explaining, without the weight of other people's gratitude or pity. But disguises had a cost. She was starting to forget which parts were real. That evening, Marcus found her in the studio, late afternoon light turning her canvas amber. He stood in the doorway, jacket slung over one arm, watching her work with an expression she couldn't read. "You're talented," he said finally. "I'm adequate." She didn't look up. "Talent implies I could make a living at it. Maybe you're selling to the wrong market." She did look up then, surprised by something in his tone. Interest. Genuine curiosity. It felt dangerous, this small deviation from script. "We should leave in an hour," Marcus said, the moment passing. "For the event. I'll be ready." But instead of leaving, he lingered. "This arrangement. It's working well, I think. Professionally speaking." "Professionally," Becca agreed, the word tasting like ash. They arrived at the brass anchor just after 8, Marcus's hand settling automatically at the small of her back as they entered. The bar occupied a converted warehouse space, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, where corporate types in expensive casual were mixed with neighborhood regulars who'd claimed their stools long before gentrification arrived. Elena Vasquez worked the bar with efficient grace, her movements economical and precise. She clocked Becca immediately. The way she scanned exits, the subtle tension in her shoulders, the edge of a tattoo visible above her collar. Their eyes met for half a second. Recognition passed between them, the kind only soldiers shared. Marcus ordered whiskey. Becca asked for water. "You can drink," he said. "I don't mind." "I know. I don't want to." They sat at the bar, waiting for Marcus's security consultants to arrive. The conversation came easier here somehow, away from the penthouse's careful boundaries. Marcus told her about his first startup failure, the app that had crashed and burned spectacularly when he was 26. Becca found herself telling him about Tyler's soccer career, how he'd been scouted by Division I schools before the accident. "He doesn't blame you, you know," Marcus said quietly, "for entering this arrangement. He told me so, at the rehabilitation center." Becca's head snapped toward him. "You visited Tyler?" "Twice. I wanted to meet the person you'd sacrificed so much for." Marcus's expression was unreadable. "He's remarkable. He has your stubbornness." Something shifted in Becca's chest, dangerous and unwelcome. This wasn't supposed to happen. They weren't supposed to become real to each other. The door opened. 2 men entered, and Becca's entire body language changed in a way Marcus couldn't possibly have noticed, but Elena did. The taller one moved like violence contained. Former special forces, probably Russian. The shorter one carried himself with cage fighter arrogance, all swagger and poorly concealed menace. They weren't here for a drink. Marcus excused himself toward the restroom. Both men followed. Becca counted to 5, then moved. The hallway leading to the restrooms was narrow, deliberately so, a bottleneck in the bar's architecture that prevented crowding. The 2 men had Marcus pressed against the wall, their postures casual enough not to alarm anyone glancing toward the back, but the threat was unmistakable. "Mr. Sterling," the Russian said, accent thick as winter. "You are making certain people very nervous with your new software." "Competition makes people nervous," Marcus replied, voice steady despite the adrenaline Becca could see in his pulse. "That's capitalism." The MMA fighter, Jax, based on the tattoo crawling up his neck, grabbed Marcus's collar. "This is friendly advice. Delay the launch. Reconsider your timeline. Things could get complicated." "Things are already complicated," Becca said from behind them. Both men turned. Jax laughed, low and dismissive. "The wife. Pretty thing. Why don't you head back to the bar, sweetheart, before?" Becca moved. Military training translated into muscle memory that bypassed conscious thought entirely. She closed the distance in 3 steps, struck Jax's extended arm at the precise angle to make his grip release, pivoted into his space while his brain was still processing pain, and drove her elbow into his solar plexus with enough force to steal his air. He folded, and she was already turning toward Dmitri. The Russian was faster, better trained. He reached for something under his jacket, and Becca's hand intercepted his wrist, twisted, forced the weapon, a tactical knife, from his grip with a joint lock that would have made her Marine Corps instructors proud. She had him against the wall in seconds, his own blade pressed to his throat, her body weight leveraged in a way that made resistance pointless. "Tell your employer," Becca said, voice flat and cold, "that the CEO has better security than they thought." Behind her, Jax was trying to rise. Becca's foot connected with his jaw, without her ever taking her eyes off Dmitri. He went down hard, unconscious before he hit the floor. The Russian's eyes widened. Not fear exactly, but recalculation. He was looking at her differently now, seeing what she'd kept hidden. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Someone you really shouldn't have threatened." Elena appeared at the hallway entrance. Phone already raised. "Police are on their way. Security footage is saved. You boys picked the wrong bar." The next 20 minutes blurred into statements and questions and the controlled chaos of police procedure. Becca stood apart, hands trembling slightly from adrenaline crash, unable to meet Marcus's gaze. She'd shattered the careful construct of their arrangement with 90 seconds of violence. Every assumption he'd made about her lay broken at their feet. In the car ride home, silence stretched like wire about to snap. Marcus finally spoke. "You were Special Forces. Marines. Combat medic and security specialist. 8 years." Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "2 tours overseas. You never mentioned. Would you have married me if you'd known?" She turned toward him then, meeting his eyes. "Be honest." He opened his mouth, closed it. The answer was there between them, sharp and truthful. "That's what I thought," Becca said. They reached the penthouse in loaded silence. Marcus paid the driver, followed Becca to the elevator, and neither spoke until the doors closed and they were alone in the ascending cage. "Who are you, really?" Marcus asked, voice barely above a whisper. Becca leaned against the elevator wall, exhaustion settling into her bones. "Does it matter? Our arrangement hasn't changed. You needed a wife. I needed money. Everything else is just details." "Details?" Marcus laughed, a bitter sound. "You just took down 2 hired mercenaries with your bare hands. That's not a detail, Becca. That's who I used to be." She pushed off the wall as the elevator chimed. "Not who I am now." But they both knew that was a lie. The penthouse felt different now, as though violence had followed them home and rearranged the furniture in ways only they could perceive. Marcus poured himself a drink he didn't want. Becca stood at the window, watching Chicago's lights blur through glass. "Tell me," Marcus said finally. "All of it." So she did. The words came haltingly at first, then faster. 8 years of service compressed into confession. The ambush outside Fallujah where she'd saved her unit but lost Sarah Mendez, her best friend, bleeding out while Becca held pressure on wounds no field medicine could fix. The Purple Heart in a box she never opened. The nightmares that made sleep feel like combat. The way she'd left the Marines not victorious but broken, carrying survivors' guilt like a second skeleton. "Tyler's accident happened 6 months after I got out," Becca continued, voice raw. "I was barely functioning, and suddenly I had to be functional. Had to be strong. The medical bills buried us. When your assistant's acquaintance reached out about the arrangement, it felt like salvation. A way to save Tyler without putting on a uniform again." Marcus set his glass down untouched. "You thought I'd judge you. For your service. Everyone judges. They either make you a hero or a victim. Neither is true." She turned from the window finally. "I'm just someone who did a job, and it cost more than I expected to pay. And you've been pretending to be someone else ever since. Haven't you?" Becca challenged. The controlled CEO, always calm, never vulnerable. "That's a performance too." Marcus flinched, the observation landing like a blow. "My father left when I was 8. Packed a bag one Tuesday morning and never came back. My mother worked herself nearly to death to give me opportunities. I built Sterling Tech to prove something. To him, to her, to everyone who ever doubted me. And then there was Victoria." "Victoria? The woman before you." "She was everything I thought I wanted, sophisticated, connected, ambitious. Turned out she wanted my bank account more than she wanted me." Marcus's laugh was sharp. "So yes, I learned to control everything. Relationships became transactions because at least those had clear terms." They stood in the living room, 3 months of careful distance collapsing into brutal honesty. "This arrangement," Becca said slowly, "it's not working anymore." Marcus's expression shuddered. "You want out. I want truth. I can't keep pretending we're strangers who happen to share an address. Not after tonight." Before Marcus could respond, Becca moved to her room, returning with a small wooden box. She opened it, revealing the Purple Heart nestled in silk and a photograph. Her Marine unit, 12 faces grinning in desert sun, Sarah Mendez's arms slung around Becca's shoulders. "This is who I was," Becca said. A woman who could kill if necessary and did. Who watched friends die. Who came home and couldn't figure out how to live without the structure of orders and missions. She touched Sarah's face in the photograph. I'm still figuring out who I'm supposed to be now. Marcus studied the photograph, then Becca's face. Maybe you don't have to be anyone except exactly who you are. And who's that? Someone brave enough to save lives. Strong enough to rebuild after loss. Honest enough to tell me the truth even when it costs you. Marcus reached out, hesitated, let his hand drop. Someone I'm just beginning to actually know. That night, Becca's nightmares returned with force. Marcus heard her through the walls. The sharp intake of breath, the murmured words in a voice that sounded nothing like her civilian self. He stood outside her door, hand raised to knock, uncertain if intrusion would help or harm. Morning brought Lieutenant Colonel James Morrison, Becca's former commanding officer, arriving unannounced after seeing news coverage of the bar incident. He found them at breakfast, tension thick as smoke. "Rebecca," Morrison said, his voice carrying the weight of command. "We need to talk." He assessed Marcus with a glance that cataloged everything: body language, relationship dynamics, threat level. Whatever he saw must have satisfied something, because his posture relaxed fractionally. "The violence last night," Morrison said to Becca. "How are you processing?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Becca's composure cracked. "I don't know, Colonel. They were threatening Marcus, and I reacted. Like I was trained to react." "Protecting someone you care about isn't the same as combat," Morrison said gently. "Intent matters. Context matters." Marcus's phone buzzed. "Sarah, texting. Drake's company just moved assets. Increased activity." The bar incident wasn't random. He showed Becca the message. Her expression hardened, the combat veteran surfacing through civilian disguise. "Vincent Drake," Marcus said. "My primary competitor. If he sent those men." "Then last night was just the opening move," Becca finished. She looked at Morrison. "I need tactical support. Resources. People I can trust." "You have them." Morrison's expression was granite. "And you have me." Marcus watched this transformation, his quiet artist wife becoming someone else entirely. A strategist. A warrior. Someone who understood violence in ways he never would. But underneath everything, she was still the woman who painted at dawn, who loved her brother fiercely, who carried wounds that wouldn't heal. "If Drake's coming for me," Marcus said slowly, "then we're in this together. No more pretending. No more separate lives. We're partners." Becca met his eyes. "Partners in what?" "Everything," Marcus replied. "If you'll have me." The answer hung between them, heavy with implications neither was quite ready to name. But something had shifted irrevocably. The arrangement had become something else, something real, complicated, and entirely unplanned. Outside, Chicago woke to another ordinary day. Inside the penthouse, two people stopped hiding from each other and began the harder work of being seen. The cyber attack hit at 3 a.m, servers screaming alerts that dragged Marcus from sleep into crisis mode. By dawn, Sterling Tech's emergency response team had contained the breach, but not before preliminary encryption data vanished into digital smoke. At 8, a brick shattered Marcus's office window, carrying a message scrawled in red, "Withdraw the software." "This is war," Sarah said, standing in the glass-strewn office. Becca arrived an hour later, assessed the damage with tactical precision, and began identifying vulnerabilities Marcus's security team had missed. "Your building access relies on outdated badge readers. Your server room has a single entry point, bottleneck for defense, but also a trap if someone gets through. You're thinking like a business. Drake's thinking like an insurgent." Marcus's head of security bristled. "With all due respect, Mrs. Sterling." "Captain Morrison," Becca corrected quietly. "Marines." "And respectfully, your perimeter security wouldn't stop a determined teenager." She outlined defensive strategies with military efficiency, layered access protocols, randomized patrol patterns, veteran contacts through Elena, and Colonel Morrison, who could provide informal surveillance. Marcus watched her transform his corporate infrastructure into something resembling a forward operating base. "You're enjoying this," he said after the security team dispersed. "I'm useful," Becca replied. "There's a difference." That afternoon, Tyler's physical therapy session became an intervention. "You're falling for him." Tyler said, maneuvering through parallel bars with determined focus. It's complicated. It's simple. You're just scared. Tyler paused, breathing hard. After everything you've survived, Becca, don't let fear be what stops you. The tech industry reception that evening felt like theater, champagne, and networking while threats circled unseen. Vincent Drake materialized beside them, all calculated charm and predatory eyes. Marcus, and the lovely Mrs. Sterling. Drake's smile never reached his eyes. Quite the spectacle at the brass anchor. Your wife is full of surprises. My wife, Marcus said, hand tightening on Becca's waist, is none of your concern. Everything about you concerns me. Drake's mask slipped fractionally. Your software threatens market stability. Perhaps we could discuss a partnership. Avoid unnecessary complications. I don't partner with people who send mercenaries, Becca said evenly. Drake's expression froze. Careful with accusations, Mrs. Sterling. Slander is expensive. After he left, Marcus received the cease and desist letter via email. Patent infringement claims so baseless they insulted intelligence, designed purely to drain resources and delay launch. Late that night, they worked side by side in the converted dining room command center, mapping Drake's patterns of attack. Becca's shoulder brushed Marcus's as she leaned over documents. Neither moved away. This reminds you of something, Marcus observed. Military planning. Everything reminds me of something. Becca's voice held edges. That's the problem with PTSD. The past doesn't stay past. Marcus set down his pen. Tell me what you need. When it's bad, what helps? The question's gentleness nearly undid her. No one's asked that before. I'm asking now. Sarah's call interrupted. Another security breach, minor but persistent. They worked until dawn, and somewhere in the exhausted hours, Marcus's hand found Becca's. She didn't pull away. The Whitfield meeting deadline transformed the penthouse into perpetual motion. Marcus brought work home entirely, and boundaries dissolved. Strategy sessions bleeding into shared meals. Conversations drifting from corporate warfare to childhood memories neither had planned to share. Becca's PTSD intensified with sustained pressure. Hypervigilance kept her scanning windows, checking locks, mentally cataloging weapons from kitchen knives to improvised options. Sleep became enemy territory. 3 nights before the Whitfield dinner, Marcus found her on the living room floor, knees pulled to chest, breathing in shallow gasps that signaled full panic attack. He'd watched Dr. Thornton's videos, read the materials Becca had reluctantly shared. Becca, he said softly, sitting a careful distance away. I'm here. You're safe. I can't breathe. You can. 5 things you see. Tell me. Her eyes darted wildly, then focused. Window. Coffee table. Your hand. Lamp. Painting. 4 things you can touch. She reached out, fingers finding carpet, her own sleeve, Marcus's extended hand. Floor. Shirt. You. Watch. He guided her through grounding techniques with patient repetition until her breathing steadied, until the present reasserted itself over whatever battlefield her mind had conjured. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. Marcus shifted closer. You've saved me twice now. Let me help save you back. Intimacy accumulated in small moments. Marcus learning how she took coffee, Becca leaving sketches on his desk that made him laugh, hands lingering when passing documents. They cooked together one evening, and Becca realized she couldn't remember the last time domesticity felt this uncomplicated. Tell me about your mother, she said, chopping vegetables while Marcus worked the stove. Brilliant. Terrifying. She built a career representing Fortune 500 companies while raising me alone. Taught me that weakness was luxury we couldn't afford. He paused. I think that's why I struggle with this, with you. Being vulnerable feels like failure. It's not. Becca set down her knife. It's the bravest thing you can do. Their eyes met across the kitchen, something electric passing between them. Marcus moved closer, and Becca's breath caught. Sarah's call shattered the moment. Another breach, this time personal. Someone had left photos of Tyler at the rehabilitation center, surveillance images that proved Drake knew exactly where to strike. Marcus watched Becca transform, the softness vanishing, replaced by cold tactical assessment. He threatened Tyler. That was a mistake. Enhanced security surrounded Tyler within hours. But the damage was done. Drake had shown he'd target anything, anyone. The Whitfield dinner invitation arrived like a test they couldn't afford to fail. Marcus held the embossed card, feeling the weight of everything riding on one evening's performance. "We can do this," Becca said, reading his expression. "Together." "Together," Marcus echoed, and realized he meant it beyond the arrangement, beyond the deal, beyond everything except the truth growing between them like something inevitable. Thomas Whitfield's estate embodied understated wealth, elegant proportions, comfortable furniture, family photos suggesting lives lived beyond balance sheets. He greeted them with firm handshakes and assessing eyes that missed nothing. Dinner conversation began conventionally: market trends, technology's social impact, Chicago's cultural scene. Then Whitfield shifted gears. "How do you handle disagreements?" he asked, watching them carefully. Marcus and Becca exchanged glances. "We're both stubborn," Marcus said. "But Becca's usually right." "I'm tactically sound," Becca corrected. "Marcus is strategically brilliant. Different skills, complementary applications." "You sound like soldiers describing a mission." "All marriages are missions," Becca replied. "The objective is staying together through hostile territory." Whitfield laughed genuinely. "What do you admire most about each other?" Marcus answered without hesitation. "Her courage. Not the combat kind, though that's remarkable. The courage to keep trying after everything she's survived. To choose hope over fear." Becca felt tears threatening. "His loyalty. He defends people who matter to him absolutely. And he's learning that vulnerability isn't weakness. That's harder than it sounds." The words were true. Somewhere between rehearsal and reality, they'd stopped performing. After dinner, Whitfield requested private conversation with Marcus. In the study, he poured whiskey neither man touched. "I know how your marriage started," Whitfield said bluntly. "My investigators are thorough. The arrangement, the transaction, all of it." Marcus's blood froze. "But I also know what I saw tonight," Whitfield continued. "Two people who found something real in unlikely circumstances. My son died alone, destroyed by corporate pressure and empty success. You have a chance at different. The question is, do you know what you have?" "I'm beginning to," Marcus admitted. "Then you have 1 week. Figure out what's true. Because I invest in authenticity, Mr. Sterling, not arrangements." The drive home stretched silent and charged. Inside the penthouse, neither could settle. At 2 a.m., they collided in the kitchen, Marcus seeking water, Becca seeking distraction, both finding each other. "He knows," Marcus said. "I figured." Becca leaned against the counter. "What did he say?" "That we have a week to figure out what's real." Becca's laugh was shaky. "What's real is I can't stop thinking about you. What's real is this stopped being an arrangement weeks ago, and I've been too terrified to say it." Marcus closed the distance between them. "I'm terrified too." "Of what?" "Losing this. Losing you. Of wanting something I didn't plan for and can't control." "Control is overrated," Becca whispered. He kissed her then, tentative at first, testing boundaries, then deeper as 3 months of suppressed attraction ignited. Her hands found his hair, his arms circled her waist, and for those suspended moments, nothing existed except this. Truth finally spoken, desire finally acknowledged, two people letting walls crumble. They broke apart breathing hard, foreheads touching. "We should talk about this," Marcus said. "In the morning." Becca pulled him back. "Right now, I just want to feel something real." So they did, stumbling toward his room, shedding pretense with clothing, discovering each other with reverence and urgency equally mixed. And when dawn filtered through windows, they lay tangled together, irreversibly changed. The arrangement had ended. Something infinitely more complicated had begun. Sarah's hands shook as she delivered the news. "David, my cousin, he's been feeding Drake everything." The betrayal cut deep, but worse followed swiftly. At Tyler's rehabilitation center, Dimitri returned with reinforcements. Becca was visiting when they struck, 3 men attempting to grab Tyler as leverage. She fought with desperate precision, protecting her brother while patients screamed. One attacker went down hard, bones breaking under trained strikes. Dimitri escaped, but security footage captured everything. By evening, the video had gone viral. Tech CEO's wife, secret combat veteran, screamed headlines. Reporters descended like locusts. The carefully constructed civilian life Becca had built shattered across social media. Whitfield called. The publicity complicated everything. Becca sat on the bathroom floor that night, dissociating completely. Marcus found her there, eyes vacant, reliving horrors he couldn't see. She'd used lethal force again. The guilt was drowning her. Marcus made a choice he'd never made before. He walked away from work. For Becca, he disappeared to Colonel Morrison's cabin, letting the world spin without him. Healing isn't fixing, Dr. Thornton said via video call. It's presence. So Marcus stayed present. Through nightmares and flashbacks, through tears and silence. They talked about futures beyond crisis, about who they wanted to become. Protecting people you love isn't combat, Becca said finally, understanding settling. Intent matters. Meanwhile, Sarah, Elena, and Colonel Morrison built their case. Drake's attacks had left evidence, financial trails, testimony, patterns of criminal conspiracy. We have everything we need, Sarah reported. Time to go on offense. They returned to Chicago united, no longer defending, but attacking. Marcus's press conference was surgical. He named Drake publicly, presented evidence of corporate espionage and criminal harassment. Federal agents raided Quick Tech simultaneously. Drake, cornered and desperate, made his final play. At Whitfield's office, he presented fabricated evidence of marriage fraud. It was a scheme, Drake insisted, to secure your investment through deception. Whitfield turned to Becca. Are you in love with him? The room held its breath. Yes, Becca said simply. I am. Then nothing else matters. Whitfield stood. I invest in truth, Mr. Drake. You should try it. Drake's board removed him that afternoon. Federal charges followed. Dimitri was apprehended at O'Hare, the final piece falling. Victory tasted bittersweet. They'd won, but the cost was written in Becca's nightmares and Marcus's gray hairs. Still, they'd won together. That counted for everything. 3 months after Drake's arrest, Marcus's encryption software launched to industry acclaim. But the real victory happened quietly, in moments stolen from headlines. They renewed their vows at the brass anchor, Elena officiating before their chosen family. Tyler stood with assistant's braces, tears streaming as he watched his sister marry for real this time. Colonel Morrison's gruff approval. Sarah's delighted grin. Thomas Whitfield's knowing smile. Dr. Thornton's quiet satisfaction. I choose you, Marcus said, voice steady. Not from necessity, but from love. I choose you, Becca replied. Every broken piece and all. The penthouse transformed from divided territories into shared home. Becca's paintings covered walls once pristine. Marcus's work schedule became reasonable, evenings reserved for living rather than earning. Becca accepted the director position at the Veterans Center, overseeing programs Marcus's company funded. Helping others navigate civilian transition gave her purpose beyond survival. Tyler returned to college part-time, pursuing physical therapy, determined to help others reclaim mobility. One evening, Marcus found Becca in the studio, paintbrush suspended mid-stroke. What are you thinking? He asked, arms circling her waist from behind. That I'm pregnant, she said simply. The brush clattered to the floor. Marcus turned her gently, searching her face. How do you feel? Terrified. Happy. Uncertain. Becca's smile was tremulous. Ready, I think. With you. They stood at the window later, watching Chicago's lights shimmer like promises. No more hiding. No more pretending. Just two people who'd found each other through necessity and chosen each other through love. Think we're ready for this? Marcus asked, hand resting on her still flat stomach. Becca leaned into him. We survived Drake, PTSD, corporate warfare, and falling in love. I think we can handle a baby. Together, Marcus said. Always together, Becca agreed. Outside, the city hummed with possibility. Inside, two people began writing their real story, messy, imperfect, and absolutely worth every risk. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.